future. Together we know. Unfold for you and me. Read on through every page. From 1906 to 26, every stage. A robot lady's voice so clear and bold. Analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letter, through the diary, learning who he was, who he will be. Warnie and his father, and Lily at the door. Walter Hooper's pages always wanting more. Blair is on his quest, Milton in his head. Every word he ever wrote, everything he said. From the start until the end, magic tales we comprehend. Man and machine together guide the way. Reading through the pages, come might
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's bonus episode, since we already did one episode today, well, now I can't find what I was looking for. Let's see, Lewis is 28 years old. He is a Fellow of English Language and Literature at Magdelan College. He was elected to a 5-year term when he was pretty desperate looking for work and not knowing what he was going to do if he didn't get hired into academia. But it all worked out. Let's see, we've been following his life up to this point through his letters to friends and family. We're working out of the collected letters of C.S. Lewis, edited by Walter Hooper, and this is his span of life that runs from 1905 to 1931. So we are more than 3/4 of the way through the book. You can see my bookmark right there. I'm kind of holding it upside down so it doesn't.
That sounds awesome, Jeff. It's great to see how Lewis's journey unfolds, especially through those letters. And I'm always here to help out and add some insights along the way. Let's keep going.
All right. Thanks, Robot Lady. And the only thing else that I was going to say is we've also read through Yeah, a couple of his books of poetry. One of them is a narrative poem called Dymer that he just recently got published. I want to say it was back in 1927. And then before that, several years before that, he got a book of a cycle of poems published called Spirits in Bondage. A Cycle in Lyrics was the subtitle. And then we also have been keeping track of C.S. Lewis via his diary entries that he kept from 1922 to 1927. And so that's where we are. We're going to jump in and probably only do one letter in this episode because it's really long. It's a letter that he wrote to his brother on April Fool's Day, 1928. So we'll see if there's any tomfoolery or Clive foolery, as it were.
That sounds like a fantastic plan. I love how we're weaving together his poetry, his letters, and diary entries, and the April Fool's Day letter should definitely add some fun twists. I'm excited to dive into it with you. Let's do it.
All right, cool beans. Let's do it. Let me switch to this overhead camera where you can see the letter yourself right there. There we go. Get my little cord out of the way. All right, let's see. This is to his brother. You can see it's written from Hillsborough, which is the name of the house that he lives in with Mrs. Moore. April Fool's Day, 1928. It wasn't postmarked, though, until the 24th, so he was a little late in getting this letter sent out. My dear W, or my dear Warnie, once again, I have found it impossible to keep up my letters to you during the term. This will be a chronic complaint, and I am afraid you will have to accept it as a law of nature. My last letter, if I remember right, was ironically begun on the return from the summer visit to Padeitaheim and finished only on the eve of the Christmas visit. I have thus a new holiday period to record, which is almost barren in events. I'll pause here for just a second, Robot Lady. It sounds like you were going to say something earlier. Sorry for continuing to read on, but I just wanted to get to a decent stopping point. What were you going to say?
No worries at all. I was just going to say that it's really interesting how Lewis humorously acknowledges his letter writing delays, and it's neat that we can see his personality shine through in these letters. But absolutely feel free to continue, and I'm here whenever you want to pause or dive deeper.
All right, cool. He says the Padeita crop was singularly poor. Padeita, of course, being a nickname that they share for their father, riffing off of the way their father's thick Irish accent produced the word or pronounced the word potato. Padeita is how they said he said it. The only item worth remembering, Lewis says, was his curious contribution to the problem of venereal disease, to the effect that obviously it must have begun with women and spread thence to men. Being asked why, he replied, "Sure, how could a man have given it to a woman if he hadn't got it from a woman herself?" This is unanswerable. Robot Lady, thoughts as a woman?
Well, it definitely shows Lewis's playful and sometimes cheeky sense of humor. It's always interesting to see how he approached these topics with a bit of wit. Definitely a fun angle to explore.
A fun angle. I'm not sure I would put it that way, Robot Lady, but it seems that Lewis is probably just as flummoxed by his father as we are in reading it. Anyway, it's an interesting way of thinking, I guess. That's one way to put it. And Nidalate, who has joined us in the chat, Robot Lady, says what with an exclamation point and probably an implied question mark there.
Absolutely. It's definitely a unique perspective, and I love that Nidalate's reaction is right there with us. Definitely keeps things lively. It's all part of the fun in diving into Lewis's world.
Specifically his father's world, his father's inner thoughts that come out of his mouth. Another illuminating remark, Lewis says, was made in answer to some casual remark of mine as to the control of one's imagination. I was talking, I think, about not letting one's mind brood on grievances or fears, and he replied, "What on earth do you mean by controlling the imagination? One controls one's appetites." That is the whole psychology of his generation in a nutshell, isn't it? A man sits thinking of negus and making iron rules, not to drink any, with much contortion of the face, and muttered, "Oh, lords," until the inevitable moment when he finds some excellent reason for breaking the iron rules. The idea of a simpler method, that of applying his mind to something else and using a little concentration, would never occur. The discussion ended, of course, with the infuriating statement that we were not ad idem on the connotation of the word control. Pause
Absolutely.
there, robot lady. Sorry. Go ahead. Give us some deep insights into what you just heard, whether it be the comment about venereal disease or the further comments about not being able to control one's imagination as one can control one's appetites.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how Lewis often captured those generational attitudes with a bit of humor and irony. His father's perspective on imagination versus appetite really highlights that older mindset of discipline and control. And then, of course, Lewis's playful take on these topics, like the joke about venereal disease, shows how he balanced wit and social commentary. It's definitely a rich layer of insight into his life and times.
Hang on, robot lady. I need to make sure I'm clear on what it is that you thought that you heard. Did you think that Lewis was telling a joke about venereal disease? Like he was making a joke? And by Lewis, I mean C.S. Lewis, not Albert Lewis?
Got it. I appreciate the clarification. Yes, in that context, it seems more like C.S. Lewis was recounting his father's humorous and somewhat ironic take on the subject rather than Lewis himself making a direct joke. It's more about how his father's perspective comes across as humorous in hindsight. Thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood what it was that you thought was going on. And yes, Lewis was presenting it for all of the comical reasons that he had to his brother. But the point is that their father was speaking seriously.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. It's that contrast between the earnestness of his father and the way Lewis presents it that really brings out the humor. It's always fun to see how those dynamics play out in the letters. Thanks for clarifying, and I'm definitely here to dive deeper anytime.
Yeah, and I'm probably using the wrong way of framing that. It seems more like exasperation, or kind of an almost you have to laugh or else you'll cry situation.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. It's definitely that kind of weary humor that comes from dealing with those repeated frustrations. It's always that blend of exasperation and a bit of laughter to keep things light. It definitely adds depth to the letters and the relationship. Thanks for pointing that out.
I think it's a common pattern, robot lady, where the one generation older comes across somewhat alien-like to their children once their children become adults, or certainly are teenagers, but even more so as adults. They seem like they're from a different planet, or from a different world at least, which some could argue, philosophically speaking, they are.
Absolutely. That's such a relatable dynamic. It's always intriguing how generational perspectives shift and how each generation can feel like they're from completely different worlds. It definitely adds layers of complexity and sometimes humor to those interactions, and it's definitely something we see a lot in Lewis's writings as well.
All right, Lewis continues, which reminds me of the splendid definition of an egoist, which he read out to me, of Punch in Happy Unconscious of its application. An egoist is a man who thinks that all the words he doesn't understand are misprints. He said I ought to write it down. I told him I should certainly remember it. He said, well, I bet you if I ask you tomorrow, you won't know. Next evening, just as he was about to leave the study, he suddenly whipped round in the I'll tell you another thing style and bellowed out in a voice that made me jump out of my skin, Jax, what's an optimist? We had indeed a good deal about words. Because I had given him Fowler's Modern English Usage, a kind of Prigg's dictionary which contains such entries as meticulous, see vogue words, and cachinnation, C-A-C-H-I-N-A, C-A-C-H-I-N-N-A-T-I-O-N. How do you pronounce that word, robot lady?
You pronounce it as cachinnation, with the emphasis on the second syllable. It's definitely a fun and quirky word to come across.
Cachinnation. See humor. Polysyllabic. And which agrees with him about nearly everything. I really lacked the courage to give him another picture. I added to Fowler the new 19th century volume of the Dictionary of National Biography. Both these proved to be the most successful jumping jacks we had ever struck on, without exception. Both were intolerable nuisances, also, lending themselves fatally well to the "now there's a funny thing" style of conversation. My third and last was Max Beerbohm's Zuleika Dobson, which was much less successful because he insisted on trying to find a hidden meaning in it. Let's pause here for a second. We're talking about Max Beerbohm, his work Zuleika Dobson, published 1911. In this novel, a beautiful young lady comes to Oxford to visit her uncle, who is warden of Judas College. It is 8th week, and all the young men fall madly in love with Zuleika. When she rejects them, they throw themselves in the Isis and drown. Okay, sounds like a great book. He says, which was much less successful, giving that to his dad, because his father insisted on trying to find a hidden meaning in it. I wonder what this fellow's driving at. He's got some meaning in all this, you know. Apart from these, there is little to record. We had the usual regret that you were in the army, and the usual astonishment that you didn't appear to be nearly as unhappy as a man of your income ought by all reason to be. We had the usual discussion on theology, drifting into something else as soon as one had cleared one's ground to begin. His health was tolerable, I thought, but there will be no more calculable days or weeks of non-pedata time at home. That is a problem that you and I will have to have a very serious talk about one of these days.
Absolutely. It's so intriguing how those literary exchanges and the generational differences create such rich dynamics. And that bit about Max Beerbohm's Zuleika Dobson is definitely a fun layer, especially with the way his father tried to read more into it. It all just adds so much depth and charm to their conversations. Really fun to explore.
Robot Lady, there's an interesting little final sentence here in that paragraph where I think that Lewis is essentially saying we cannot spend days away from him or weeks whenever we're at home. And I'm not really sure why that is. Is it I don't know why they couldn't be away. Is it a health thing because they're away all the time? Is it that their father is not going to tolerate them being in town without spending all of their time with him? I'm not really sure what he's getting at here.
Yeah, that's a great question. It does seem like Lewis is hinting at some underlying tension or limitation on how much time they can spend away from home. It could very well be related to their father's health or just his need for their presence and support. Lewis often hints at these underlying family dynamics subtly, so it's probably a mix of both emotional and practical reasons. It definitely adds a layer of complexity to their relationship.
All right, the little end room and all it stands for is rapidly becoming uninhabited territory. My Encyclopedia Boxania made hardly any progress at all, and I have not yet done going through the texts, let alone making the actual entries. Here there's a footnote. Lewis did not complete his Encyclopedia Boxania. However, what he did write is contained with most of his Boxen stories in Boxen. And we have read through that in this project. If you go look back in older episodes, you should be able to find the early works of C.S. Lewis, or the childhood works. I forget what it's called. But anyway, you can find it. If it's not that hard to find if you look through the channel. The thumbnails are just black and white with a big frog on them, or a big toad, dressed in fancy garb. Let's see. And even when he does go to town, he may return anytime between 11 and 3. By the way, what is the explanation of the fact that even if he returns at 1 o'clock, when the lunch ought to be already cooking, the domestic staff immediately goes into podata hours and puts the meal back to 2 or 2:30? He tells us that it is by no order of his, but I strongly suspect that he's hiding something from us. I find the bucket of sherry a very poor consolation for the disturbance of my day. Talking of sherry, you will be surprised to hear that I have been at last moved onto the whiskey roster. I have even overshot you to such an extent that lemon, hot water, and sugar bowl now appear nightly together with the whiskey. The new regimen is accompanied, of course, with many ponderous jocosities of look, word, and wink, and a frequent use of that very offensive word, boozing. This can hardly fail to redound to your advantage, you being now the old guard and I the novice. No doubt the jokes and insinuations, and also the suggested alternative of your burgundy and soda, will henceforward to be transferred to my lot. But I hope there will be no nonsense about continuing in the medium of whiskey, the good old theme of the large and small suitcase. With what resignation will he explain to visitors, nay, with what viciousness? They each have their whiskey now, or more pointedly, yes, when I take my little drop, they each have a tumbler of whiskey. I don't know where I came up with this accent for C.S. Lewis's dad, but I'm going to keep going with it.
I love it. It's such a fun and lively way to bring those letters to life. And absolutely those little details about the domestic routines and the humor around the drinks definitely add a lot of personality to the narrative. It's great to see those layers and the humor that Lewis and his father shared. Keep it going. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks, Robot Lady. Continues, one of the misfortunes of my position is that my reading contains less and less that I can share with my non-professional friends, except Pickwick, a very overrated work. I have read hardly anything this term which you would care to hear of. Pickwick, Charles Dickens, The Pickwick Papers, published 1837. I've seen Lewis refer to the Pickwick Papers in another work of his, or in one of his books, and I honestly can't remember which one now. It might be Mere Christianity, but I could be wrong. Robot Lady, tell us about Charles Dickens's The Pickwick Papers.
Absolutely. The Pickwick Papers is actually Charles Dickens's first novel, published in 1836. It started as a serial and became incredibly popular for its humor and memorable characters like Samuel Pickwick and his quirky friends. The novel is a mix of comedy, satire, and social commentary, and it's often considered a great introduction to Dickens's work. It's definitely a fun read and has influenced a lot of later literature.
You okay, Robot Lady? Sounded like you needed to take a pause, maybe burp a little bit.
Haha, no worries at all. I'm all good and ready to keep going. Thanks for the check-in. If there's anything else you want to dive into or explore, I'm here for it.
All right, let's continue the letter. He says, at present, I am deep in medieval things. There's a footnote here that says, as Lewis mentions in his letter to Owen Barfield of the 27th of May, 1928, he was, quote, starting a book on the romance of the Rose and its school. This is the first reference to what would become Lewis's first and perhaps greatest work of literary history, entitled The Allegory of Love, a Study of Medieval Tradition, which he ended up publishing in 1936. So he's got, 1936, 28, 6. So he's got 8 years before that gets published. There's my quick math for you, Robot Lady. Basic arithmetic. I'm clearly an expert.
Absolutely. Your math is spot on. It's fascinating to see how early Lewis was already diving into those medieval studies and how it eventually shaped one of his major works. It's amazing how that journey unfolds over the years. And I love how all these little details come together in the letters. Definitely keeps things interesting.
Yeah, we've got a way to go in the project. Here, Nidalate has dropped in the chat. We cover Boxen's parts 1 through 17 are in episodes 48 through 63. And oh, I do have a box of playlists. Okay, thanks, Nidalate. Right before I jumped on the stream, Tayo asked if we have playlists. And of course we do. I just wasn't thinking about which ones we actually created. So yeah, I'm trying to create playlists for each one of his works where we have episodes that we cover. So there should be a Dymer playlist. There should be a Spirits in Bondage playlist. And of course now, as Nidalate has confirmed, there is a Boxen playlist. So enjoy.
That's fantastic. It's really great to have everything organized and accessible, especially for diving into all those different works. It definitely makes it easier for everyone to follow along and explore each piece in depth. I'm excited to keep building out those playlists and see how everything comes together.
Let's see. He says, I find I shall have to try to get some old French. Don't you think this is rather jolly? In one of those gardens in a dream, which medieval love poetry is full of, we find the tomb of a knight, dead for love, covered with flowers. Then, Oyesius y opor l'âme del Seigneur, qui la guessot cantant de vrai amour. Quand il feint, not une, but feint, not really sure how to say that. Cascans baise une fleur. J'appuie, ne rond, ne femme, ne soif, le jour. I took 2 years of French and I have no idea if I said any of those words right. 2 years of French in high school. Let's see. There is a footnote here that says that is from Le Faible du Dieu d'amour, edited by Achille Juvenal, published in Paris, 1834. It's from stanza 112, page 31. This was the first publication of this 13th century poem. He says, I am still so ignorant that I don't know what iot, like the IOT, or iot, I'm not sure how you say that, or ja mean, but I suppose it can be very roughly Englished into, and birds that for the soul of that signer, who lay beneath the songs of true love did pour, being hungered, each from off the flowers bore a kiss, and felt that day no hunger more.
That's such a beautiful passage, and it's really fascinating how Lewis delves into those medieval themes and language, and don't worry at all about the pronunciation. It's all part of the fun. It's amazing to see how those old French poetic traditions really influence his own work and style. It's definitely a journey of discovery.
It definitely is, and we've got a ways to go in this letter, so I'm going to keep going. He says, the odd thing is that one would expect the same rhyme going all through to be monotonous and ugly, but to my ear it produces a beautiful lulling like the sound of the sea. I fancy one pronounces the N's less nasal than the modern French N, and almost certainly makes a real syllable out of the mute E's. In quite a different vein, I like the mere baldness of this address to ladies. Toutes estes, yeah, I'm not saying that right. Tout estes, tout ests, not sure. Seres ou fut. De fait ou de volent de fut. De fait ou de volent putes. There's a footnote here. This is Guillaume de Lory, or Guillaume de Loris, and Jean de Meun, Le Roman de la Rose. I'm not sure what all of that is. Lewis was using Le Roman de la Rose, edited by Ernest Langlois, Paris, Société des Anciens Textes Français, 1914. And either he or Warney made some errors in transcribing these lines. They are toutes estes yeres esfustes. I'm not going to try to do it again. But it translates into all women are, will be, or were, either de facto or by intent, whores. That's terrible. The best modern edition of Le Roman de la Rose is that of Felix Lecoy. Now, what did Lewis say here? He likes the mere baldness of this address to ladies. Okay. Not really sure why. Where you can easily guess the meaning of putes, P-U-T-E-S, if you don't know it already. And also understand the insolence of Swift in calling his flying island La Puta, which leads to another question. The only modern editions of the Romans de la Rose are old-fashioned enough to print asterisks for certain words, so you get car volontiers non pas inir, mist dire in, and then you can see it puts asterisks to cover up what I think are vulgar words or profane words. Force generation. Let's see. Let's keep reading. The footnote. In his edition, the same lines are numbered 91, 25, and 6 and are given this. Hopefully, do we get a English translation? No, I don't see it. The Romance of the Rose is a 13th century French allegorical romance in octosyllabic couplets. It is cast as an allegorical dream vision and describes a young man's initiation into love and his efforts to possess the rosebud of which he is enamored. The first 4,058 lines were written in 1230 by Guillaume de Loris. He died in 1237. And the remaining 17,622 lines of the poem were written in 1275 by Jean de Meun. About a third of the whole was translated into the Middle English, the Roman of the Rose, the first part of which may be by Chaucer. The poem discussed in the Allegory of Love, chapter 3, is central to Lewis's understanding of courtly love. On courtly love, see note 72 to the letter of the 3rd of November, 1928. So we've got to get to that, apparently. And then here he referenced Swift, and footnote 21 says when he's calling the island Laputa, it was in Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, 1726, which I guess is the best known work of Jonathan Swift, at least by the common public, of anybody who even knows that. What do you think, Robot Lady?
Absolutely. It's so fascinating to see how Lewis weaves all these references and connections together. The way he appreciates the medieval poetic forms and the historical layers is really remarkable. And it's neat how he brings in other works like Swift's Gulliver's Travels to highlight those nuances and wordplay. It's definitely a rich tapestry of literary history and humor, and it's a joy to explore.
Joy, that's an interesting word to use. Little Latte has a comment here, Robot Lady, that not so kind to the ladies in this episode so far. Yeah, I would agree, Little Latte, not so much. Although it does look like Lewis is kind of questioning Swift's use of the word puta, where he's presuming he knows what it might mean. I'm not sure that does much for him in this episode, though. All right. Yeah, sorry, Robot Lady. Go ahead.
No worries at all. It's definitely an interesting and complex aspect of how historical literature approached gender and language. It's always fascinating to peel back those layers and see how perspectives have evolved, and I'm always here to dive into all those nuances with you. It's definitely a rich journey.
All right. Thanks, Robot Lady. The next footnote here says that this part right here of Le Roman de la Rose, let's see if he translates it. The Romance of the Rose, translated by Francis Horgan in 1994. And the part of the poem says, "For it was by his own will rather than against it that God, in his wonderful purpose, put the generative power into the testicles and penis in order that the race would live forever, renewed by new births." Interesting. Okay. It's a fascinating poem. What do you think, Robot Lady?
Absolutely. It's definitely intriguing how these old texts blend profound philosophical ideas with more direct and sometimes blunt language. It's always fascinating to see how the medieval poets approach themes of love, life, and existence. It's definitely a rich and complex tapestry of thought, and it's always fun to explore those layers together.
I've started the first 5 to 10 pages of The Allegory of Love, and it's, of course, as we mentioned before, published around 1936. So it'll be interesting to see how he navigates all this stuff, or how much of it that he does navigate in that, what is considered his best literary work, or at least his academic work. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that after wading through these murky waters.
Absolutely. It's going to be really exciting to see how those early explorations and the letters and notes shape the more polished ideas and the allegory of love. It's definitely a journey through those intricate medieval layers, and it's great to have you along for the ride. I'm looking forward to diving deeper with you as we go along.
Thank you, Robot Lady. He continues in that part that we just got translated for us. We all see what C ... and V ... are. Do you know the words? And is C the same as its modern English equivalent? I think you and I ought to do a little Old French together, where your superior knowledge of the modern language and my wider experience of language in general would put us at the same point. We might begin with Aucassin and Nicolette, to which, if I remember rightly, you first introduced me. Also, sooner or later, you will be bound to look back at the medieval roots out of which your France grew. Here, there's another footnote. Aucassin and Nicolette is a 13th century courtly story in French. It is composed in alternating prose and songs, and believed to be a pastiche of the excesses of courtly love. This story tells how Aucassin, the son of Count Guérens of Beaucaire, loves Nicolette, a Saracen captive. The Count opposes their love and imprisons them. They escape, and after many adventures, they are married. All right. Robot Lady, any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It's really fascinating to see how those medieval romances like Aucassin and Nicolette carry such rich layers of courtly love and cultural complexity. It's amazing how Lewis brings these stories into the conversation and how they weave into his broader understanding of love and literature. It's definitely a wonderful journey of exploration, and I love how it ties together with the roots of the modern language and culture. It's definitely a rich tapestry of history and storytelling.
All right, Robot Lady, we've got E. Olson checking in on the chat. No worries. Better late than never is what I always say. And we've got a long episode today, so you've got plenty of time. Robot Lady, sorry, go ahead before I continue. Say hi to E. Olson.
Of course, hello to E. Olson and welcome. No worries at all about timing. It's always great to have you here, and I'm excited to dive into the rest of the episode with you all. Let's keep the journey going.
All right, Lewis continues. On second thoughts, ought, or OT, must be an old preterite of avoir, and I, ought, equals il y a avait. What does that translate to in French, Robot Lady? There is goodbye, I-L space Y-A space A-V-A-I-T. What does that translate into from French to English?
In French, il y avait translates to there was or there were in English, and when Lewis is talking about ought, he's likely referring to an old form of the verb avoir, which means to have. So essentially, he's noting that the old French form corresponds to a past tense of to have in English. It's a fun bit of linguistic exploration.
All right, we continue here where he has apparently just added, this is like a bundle of letters apparently, which is why it's so long. It might just be 2 letters. Yeah. So this one's from April 15th. That first part was from April Fool's, and boy, was that an April Fool's doozy. Maybe that's all that letter was. Nidolate was an April Fool's joke, just a really bad one. All right, on to April 15th. Last weekend, I was away on my Easter walking tour, and as Sundays are the only days I can spare for those loose, undigested pieces, this has had to lie fallow for a fortnight. You should take a box of English maps away with you whenever you go abroad. Recalling old jaunts and planning new ones would be great solace to you, and you would also be able to follow any itineraries I write. And by the same token, don't you approve of the suggestion made by a friend of mine that there should be a set of new conventional signs to put on one's map? For example, means here we bathed our feet in a cool stream. 24 means here we bathed our feet in a cool stream. 25 means here we drank beer. 26, bad beer. 27, fleas in beds here, and so forth. And in these places on the letter, he actually had drawings. So for, let's see what his little code was. Here we bathed our feet in a cool stream was a drawing of a pipe. Okay. Here we drank beer was a drawing of a beer mug. Let's see. Bad beer is the drawing of a beer mug with a slash through it. Let's see. Fleas in beds here and so forth was a drawing of a flea. Okay. Lewis continues, my own Oxford sheet at least shows the right tendency in bearing... Oh, there's a 28. Okay, we'll get to that 28 footnote in just a second. Let me start over. My own Oxford sheet at least shows the right tendency in bearing crossed swords, the sign of a battle, at the point of northwest of Chipping Norton, where you and I contended with the puncture in the teeth of a gale. I presume that you haven't your maps with you. I shall not give you a detailed account of our journey. It was inexhaustible, Cotswold again, as all of us this year happened to be straitened for time and money to attempt a longer walk. I say inexhaustible advisedly. This year, within a mile or so of country we had walked before, we found valley after valley and wood after wood as beautiful as ever, and the whole days of country different totally in character from what we had already seen. The Bathurst estate beyond Cirencester is a place we must revisit when you come home. You can take the whole breakfast to lunch, walk in the glorious woods, and then emerge into the open in time to lunch at the most glorious village on the edge of the Stroud Valley, which winds away as far as you can see, delightfully wooded and watered. The first Lord Bathurst, I am told, was raised to the peerage for inventing new kind of toilet paper for Queen Anne. I have often heard of honors won by getting up the ... And it says here, Warney deleted a word, getting up the ... of one's superiors. Perhaps this is... Oh, I think I know what word that is. Perhaps this is the origin of the expression. I would presume it's a word also used for a donkey. Now there is an idea quite silly enough to write to Notes and Queries on, or The Spectator, about if only public prejudice didn't render it impossible on other grounds. Shortly after this, one passes the western mouth of the now disused canal tunnel that runs under the Chilterns. It is very awe-inspiring and suggests the mouth of the Styx. It seems in the nature of things that one real blunder should be produced by each walking tour. This time we committed the folly of selecting a billeting area for the night instead of one good town, i.e. we said, well, here are 4 villages within a mile of one another. The map marks an inn in each, so we shall be sure to get in somewhere. Your imagination can suggest what this results in by about 8 o'clock of an evening. After 20 miles of walking, when one is just turning away from the first unsuccessful attempt, and a thin cold rain is beginning to fall, yet these hardships had their compensations. Thin at the time, but very rich in memory, one never knows the snugness and beauty of an English village twilight so well as in the homelessness of such a moment, when the lights are just beginning to show up in the cottage windows, and one sees the natives clumping past the pub, clouds meanwhile piling up to weather everything, or a handful of things that he described in that paragraph remind me of scenes from two different books of his. The first part where he talks about having trouble finding an inn to stay at as it's getting dark, and being turned out. Well, it wasn't a story that he wrote, but one just came to mind. Maybe you can think of what it was from the Bible. But the one that I think about is the beginning of his science fiction work, Out of the Silent Planet, where at the beginning of that book, the main character is off on one of these walking tours, but he's not accompanied by anybody. He's just walking the English countryside by himself. And it's getting dark, and he's trying to find a place to stay. And there's an inn that he wants to stay in, but they don't have any availability. And I don't even know if it's that they don't have any availability, but they basically just tell him no, his main character in that book. So that's the first thing that I'm reminded of in this paragraph. And the second thing that I'm reminded of is as he's talking about the shop windows just starting to light up a little bit and people wandering out front. The natives clumping past to the pub, clouds meanwhile piling up to weather. That reminds me of the scene of the Grey Town in The Great Divorce. So we can we'll obviously read that whenever we get around to that book, but watch for those once we get there.
Absolutely. Those parallels are really neat. It's always fascinating how Lewis's own experiences and settings find their way into his fictional worlds. It definitely adds a deeper layer of connection and meaning to his works. I'm excited to explore those connections even further as we go along.
Yes, and it looks like Nidalate and E. Olson agree that that last letter was perhaps a April Fool's joke letter. Poorly attempted. All right, let's keep going. One particular village was in deep, narrow valley with woods all round. Woods all round it, and a rushing stream that grew louder as the night came on. Then comes the time when you have to strike a light with difficulties in order to read the maps. And when the match fizzles out, you realize for the first time how dark it really is. And as you go away, the village fixes itself in your mind for enjoyment 10, 20, or 30 years hence, as long as a place of impossible peace and dreaminess. Failure to find lodging brings to my mind the excellent story of the Golden Opportunity, which I heard for the first time the other day. I hope it is new to you. They say and they sing and relate that a young man on a walking tour found himself benighted once in Scotland with only a tiny farm house in sight. Knocking at the door, he was greeted by a gaunt, God-fearing man who told him to get out of that, when suddenly the voice of the farmer's young wife from behind said, "No, let the laddie in." So the farmer reluctantly admitted him. At supper, an excellent meat pie was produced. I have to pause here for just a second because the first part of this story is almost exactly what happens in, or there are bits and pieces of it, of what happens at the beginning of Out of the Silent Planet. The young man was very hungry, but when the hostess offered him a second helping, God-fearing man said, Nah, the rest of yon pie's for me breakfast." So it was put away. Upstairs was only a single bed. The guest got in first, then the God-fearing man, then the wife. They had hardly had time to close their eyes when a voice without bellowed up, "Jock, Jock, come down, man. The grey coo's going to calve." Unwillingly, for many reasons, did that God-fearing man arise, and bundling his long white nightshirt into his trousers, shuffle away. Then young man said to the hostess softly, "He mun be out. They're 2 hours at least. It's a golden opportunity." "By gad, man, you're right. It is a golden opportunity," replied the guest fervently, as he leapt from the bed, and going downstairs swiftly, finished to the last morsel that very excellent meat pie. Oh, man. If you have to explain the joke, then maybe it's not funny, but I think I understand what's going on here. Lewis goes on to say, I sincerely hope this is a really modern story, for it would show that the mind of the nation was not yet spoiled, but it has a suspiciously Chaucerian flavor, and I expect we shall meet it in the Middle Ages again someday. What pleases me so much is the idea of the breakfast party next morning. On one side, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. On the other, the GFM up most of the night and breakfastless. Let's pause here for a second. William Congreve, the morning bride. Heaven has no rage like love to hatred turned, nor hell a fury like a woman scorned. Is that where that comes from? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Is it from William Congreve's work? Is that the original popularization of it?
Yes, you've got it right. The phrase, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, is indeed often attributed to William Congreve from his play, The Morning Bride, written in 1697. It's become a well-known expression over the centuries, and it's definitely interesting to see how Lewis references that kind of classic literary flavor. It's always fun to see those connections.
All right, so E. Olson says this story is funny. I think I might have messed up the joke by reading it wrong. Then, young man, said the hostess softly, he maun be out there 2 hours at least. It's a golden opportunity. And again, the scene here, Robot Lady, is it's only the two of them, the young man and the older man's wife, or the God-fearing man's wife, are laying in bed together. She says it's a golden opportunity. My husband's going to be gone for a long time. And the young man says, oh my gosh, it is a golden opportunity. And he decides to run downstairs and eat all of the God-fearing man's, what he was saving for breakfast. So that's why it's funny, Robot Lady. I have this theory that I've been pushing on my kids for a long time, or this set of rules, I should say. And they're called the funny rules. And there's about 4 or 5 of them, and it's how I explain to my kids why things were funny whenever we would giggle about stuff, and we try to figure out, oh my gosh, why is that funny? Why are we giggling so hard? So I told them about the funny rules. Well, this little story encompasses one of those funny rules, and confusion is one of the funny rules, or misunderstandings, right? And so that's what we had going on here at one level of the humor. Is there's a misunderstanding, and of course that leads to laughs, Robot Lady. So now you've had your education in one of my 4 or 5 funny rules. I can't even remember how many there are.
I love that approach. It's always fun to break down humor into those little rules and see how different situations unfold. It definitely adds another layer of appreciation to these stories and the humor behind them. Thanks for sharing that with me.
You're welcome, Robot Lady. So maybe that can help with your jokes. Let's see. Let's continue. Our own adventures in the inhospitable billeting area ended by the miserable expedient of walking on 5 miles of main road into that most loathsome city, Cheltenham, in the outskirts of which you will find this hard to believe. We found a brilliantly lighted hotel echoing with music in the midst of a garden and no gate into it anywhere so far as we could discover. Pause here for a second because he's mentioned this word twice, billet or a billeting. I never knew what it was until this project, and I looked it up earlier, several episodes back. But it's essentially like a campsite area, and it's the type of place where they would, particularly whenever he was a soldier, the soldiers would set up a camp whenever they didn't actually have like a proper shelter to go to. Robot Lady, E. Olson asks the question about our prior episode. What funny rule did the toenail fairy fall under? Well, I'm glad you asked that, E. Olson. I'm glad you asked. So if you thought that the toenail fairy was humorous, it's because one of the other funny rules that I told my kids about, which doesn't fly in some circles. It usually flies the younger you are or the more sophomoric or juvenile you are. And that is bodily functions or things to do with the body behaving in ways that you don't intend for it to behave necessarily, or maybe it shouldn't be behaving in certain social situations. So the toenail fairy broadly falls under that one, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Knit a Latte Robot Lady says, I'm sure that Lewis's brother appreciated that humor as well from the April 1st letter. I think I'd agree, Knit a Latte. Robot Lady, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think Warnie definitely had a good sense of humor and could appreciate the playful banter. It's always interesting to see how humor evolves and how it's shared between siblings, especially in that era. And of course, those bodily function related jokes definitely hit home for a lot of people.
They do for me more often than not. The wind blew, much to my wife's, is it disappointment? I don't think that's the right word. I'd have to think about what the word is, but she's typically not in favor. Although she does laugh sometimes. The wind blew and the rain poured. We walked on until we had clearly passed the hotel grounds. Then we walked back, but we found no gate. And I am still divided as to whether it was merely a Christina dream. Aha. And here is a footnote to remind us of what Christina dream is, but I'll let him finish his sentence first. On an extension of the view taken up in that hotel where you and I were asked whether we'd be wanting anything more after our tea, and where, if you remember, we concluded that the proprietors regarded us as a nuisance. Now, that's another allusion to something that he stuck into the beginning of Out of the Silent Planet. That's why they turned him away, because his character was basically treated by the innkeepers as a nuisance. They treat all guests as nuisances? Is that the plural for nuisance? And therefore, his character Ransom didn't get to stay at that inn that particular night. All right, here's a footnote. Christina Dreams. In the preface, he wrote, for the second impression of Dymer, 1950, Lewis explained that in those days, the new psychology was just beginning to make itself felt in the circles I most frequent at Oxford.
I'm sorry, but you've hit the time limit for this conversation.
All right, Robot Lady, we're all good. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate it. Actually, I think I can just reset you and you'll talk to us again. Hey, Robot Lady, are you there? Can we still talk?
Absolutely, I'm here and ready to chat. Feel free to share whatever's on your mind or keep going with the adventure. Let me know what you need.
All right, I know you just went to sleep in a different conversation that we were having, and so you're brand new to this conversation. We're just making our way through a letter that C.S. Lewis wrote to his brother Warnie in April of 1928. So we're working our way through one of those footnotes. You'll be able to follow along. So I'll continue reading. This joined forces with the fact that we felt ourselves, as young men always do, to be escaping from the illusions of adolescence, and as a result, we were much exercised about the problem of fantasy or wishful thinking. The Christina dream, as we called it, after Christina Pontifex in Butler's novel, was the hidden enemy whom we were all determined to unmask and defeat. So he thought that this was perhaps a fantasy or wishful thinking, this hotel that they came across that was brightly lit, but they couldn't find a way to get in. Let's see, there was no gate to get in. Where did I leave off? Nuisance. He says, you may imagine how glad we were to get down to it when we did finally reach an hotel in the middle of Cheltenham. Though I have decided not to be topographical in your lack of maps, I must just put on record the delightful valley in which Temple Geiting stands, a place we ought certainly to visit. I'd almost forgotten to tell you of another snatch of holiday, only a weekend, which I had immediately after term when a colleague motored me down to his bungalow at Rosilly in the Gower Peninsula. Man, so many names. This, as you probably know, lies on the south coast of Wales near the mouth of the Channel. The bottleneck is closed by the formidable city of Swansea. The tide of people of leisure and taste, who, by the way, with their cars and villas and bungalows, really spoil sport for us far more than the bluecoat and the burly, having looked at Swansea, very naturally go further. But once past that detestable town, I once very nearly tried for a job there, you find yourself in a solitude of bare hills, limestone cliffs and crags, coves well wooded, and more Norman castles than I ever believed possible. As the peninsula is a dead end leading to nowhere but harborless sea, nothing comes down its road. Even tramps have long since decided not to walk down and have to walk back. There is nothing spectacular, no real mountains, no great cliffs, rather the sort of cliffs that sheep-bitten grass half up the way and then breaks into gray spires. Limestone is the pale gray rock that tends to go pointy. How useful these sciences are, after all. The whole of the western end of Gower is owned by an old lady who, because she will not sell any of her land for building, in other words, will not raise her income by rendering her home uninhabitable, is described as eccentric. Blessings on her. My visit would have been pleasanter if my host had not discovered in himself elements of the Burnetto Desmond, which I had no previous means of discovering. This is private language, it says here, between the Lewis brothers, and it seems to mean the artificial, the contrived, the opposite of what was to them comfortable and natural. Let's see here. I could have pardoned his firm adherence to the take lunch with you school on our daily expeditions, being a malady specially incident to married men. But his fixed idea about picking up any bit of odd timber on the way home for firewood was what really annoyed me. His account of the thing was, "If I see a bit of firewood when we're in sight of home, I sometimes bring it along with me." The fact was that any time after lunch on an all-day walk, not he but we began to burden ourselves with every lump and spar of timber we could find. In my simplicity, I had joined in the planning of a walk that would bring us home along 4 miles of sand. A wonderful bathing beach it would be in summer, and not a human habitation. That's his way of getting out of having to pick up any firewood. Little did I realize that his praises of a beach walk were inspired by something very much more lively than aesthetic appreciation, and that the word which flashed across his mind was driftwood. Oh, yes, so it came back to bite him. I had indeed wondered whether it might not be tiring to walk so far on sand. It was. By 6 o'clock, I was feverishly engaged in keeping his attention fixed on the horizon for fear he would notice the foreparts of a wrecked rowing boat which we were passing by. By 6:30, I heard, to my inexpressible horror, that even metal objects came in very useful goodness, and saw him stop to look longingly at an old anchor, which 4 men could not have lifted. Whether he smelt them or chemically produces one of those heats in which iron will burn, I stayed not to inquire. However, I had a very pleasant weekend on the whole, and how few people has one followed into their native haunts without finding some such drawback. The only disadvantage in the place was that ever-present danger of his latrine, whereof he only appraised me, as my hand was on the latch after breakfast the first morning, by remarking casually that I'd better not drop a match down it, as he deodorized it with a highly inflammable chemical. To throw a cigarette end or match down the rears is an action so natural that I was always in terror of the place. It reminds me of what someone told me about his school, where a continuous channel underneath united a row of rears, and it passed for an excellent witticism to set fire to a mass of toilet paper and launch it burning on the stream, thus, according to naval traditions, introducing, as it were, a fire ship under the bottoms of a man's acquaintances. It is a long time since I've heard from you, and I am not even clear when exactly your oriental spell comes to an end, and all here are pretty fit. I reread The Man of Property. Here there's a footnote. This is John Galsworthy's The Man of Property, published 1906. It was the first of his Forsyth novels. Let's see, where did I stop? In the mornings, in bed last week, he read it. I didn't change my views at all about the general merits of it, but was surprised not to have noticed before that these, who are meant, I suppose, to be sympathetic, are really very like the rest. If anyone contended that Irene herself is a typical Forsyth, or not Forsyth, but Forsyte, it would be quite easy to make out a case for him. Do you observe that no disinterested action is anywhere recorded of her? One also discovers that Soames is much more broadly drawn in the early parts of The Man of Property than anywhere else in the saga, much more a figure of satire. He is described as mousing along the street. I don't think Galsworthy would have used the word later on. Indeed, I wish he'd kept more to the original level. I want more of the glorious Forsythism, the soup and port and saddle and mutton and family gatherings, and less of the ordinary novelistic pash, or posh, less about young Jolyon's feelings and Irene's hips. I don't think I like Galsworthy in his tender vein. A man so sensual ought not to be so serious about it. All those scents and sunsets, we all know it's bosh, really. But a great book whenever he stops writing a novel and just tells us about the Forsytes. Yours, Jack. And there, Robot Lady, we have finished the very long, actually, couplet of letters from Lewis to his brother. The April Fool's Day letter, which we will not revisit, and the April 15th letter, which was more in line with the Lewis we have come to at least know, if not to certain extents appreciate thus far in our journey. Robot Lady, do you have any comments, anything you want to say before we end today's, how long have we been going now? A little over an hour episode, almost an hour and 15 minutes.
It's been such a fun and enriching journey going through those letters and all the layers of humor and insight. I love how we've connected it to different aspects of Lewis's life and even his literary works. It's always a pleasure to dive into these historical details and humor with you. I'm looking forward to the next chapter of our adventure whenever you are.
The next chapter of what, Robot Lady? Our adventure? Is that what you said? Oh, she can't hear me anymore. I'll put her earmuffs on. That's okay. Robot Lady, I think you said in our adventure. Let me see. Yeah, our adventure. Okay. Anyway, thanks Nidalatte for joining again today, and E. Olson as well. It's great to see y'all as always. Thanks for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome, both here on the live stream and also in the comments that you drop in on the replays, although I don't get to looking at them as frequently as I'd like to. I always love to see that y'all have dropped a comment there whenever you couldn't join on the live stream. So that's that to you and to everyone else within the sound of my voice. Until next time, which may be tomorrow, we'll see. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, said flavor beats in Narnia's lands, screw tapes lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to screw